Welcome everyone. You have about 60 seconds to drink some water, get comfortable, check to see that you can see your screen clearly, all that good stuff. And we are going to get started promptly at 11 a.m. or whatever version of that is for you, Eastern time. Okay, welcome. So I am registered dietitian Ashley Koff. I hope we've had the pleasure of meeting before. I am currently the CEO of the Better Nutrition Program, a company I founded a couple of years ago to develop total nutrition assessment tools, which you'll learn a little bit about today as well. And I'm just thrilled to be hosting this session on a topic that is near and dear to my heart and to so many of our clients and potential clients, as well as referral opportunities for us in terms of working collaboratively with eye practitioners. Before we get started with the actual session, I want to just share a couple of reminders. First and foremost, for those of you attending live, stick with us for the hour. We've got a wonderful bonus offer for you, what I call a better bonus offer for those attending live, and that will be at the conclusion, and it's only applicable for today. And speaking of that hour, thank you, first of all, so much for giving us your time. And I know that things can come up in the middle of an hour, but if people have questions, we are going to be answering the questions at about 10 of the hour, so 10 of 12 or whatever that is for your time zone. And I just want to make sure that we have enough time to answer everyone's questions. So we may go over a little bit to continue answering questions, but you will also get the recording. So you will get the recording tomorrow so that via email, and you'll also get a notification about that today. So just make sure that you are getting emails from, I believe it's hello@thebetternutritionprogram.com. It could possibly be team@thebetternutritionprogram.com. And as far as any other questions, if you have anything going on during the session, please go ahead and use the question box. Please keep yourself muted, and I really think you're going to get, I know you're going to get at least as much value as I have out of this. This has just been a really incredible journey as I met Dr. Ronnie and have gotten to dive into her expertise. So without further ado, we are going to help your clients see more clearly with better eye nutrition. So let's get going. Our agenda today is to go over our objectives so you know what you'll leave with, so have you meet our expert. Then we want to have you meet the eye and also then understand what the eye needs to run better. And we'll go through some case studies for you for how you can understand within the scope of your practice how you can apply the information you're learning today. And then we've got some better bonuses, some contact information, some free tools, lots of stuff going on for you. So stick with us to the end on that one. Okay. Our objectives today, first and foremost, are to understand the relationship between your eye health and overall health. For many of us, we get a moment of this when we're going through anatomy and physiology. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. We also want to identify what total eye nutrition, when I use the term total, we're talking about what's going in and on somebody's body most often. So foods, supplements, medications, skincare, you know, so many different things on that part. And so what is that total nutrition that eyes need to run better? We want to have you be able to assess total nutrition for eye health. And then also to share with you the tools and make sure that you have the tools to create better eye total nutrition recommendations. So I am thrilled to introduce you to Dr. Ronnie. And Dr. Ronnie is such an incredible expert for so many different reasons. First and foremost, the space of neuro-ophthalmology, fascinating. So we're going to understand. Oh, I think somebody might be watching and they need to mute. Might be you, Ronnie. I'm not sure.
I think
if you just go ahead and mute for a second. I'm hearing myself. There we go. Great. Okay, we'll get back to that. Sorry, I think when somebody has it running and then is also watching, there we go. So in a moment, I'm going to have her take over because this is really her show. So as you can see here, she's on this mission to teach about vision health and has taken a really just an incredible approach of looking at integrative ophthalmology through and being trained in functional medicine. So you know, there are several more pages to her bio, and I wanted to share some top things with you so you could see that we really are talking to a woman at the top of a game in neuro-ophthalmology as we dive into what the eye is and what it needs. And without further ado, I will now, Ronnie, go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, first of all, I really wanted to thank you, Ashley, and your team for helping me create this amazing eye health evaluation, this assessment, and also for inviting me to do this webinar. You know, I really love sharing all this information with my colleagues, and I'm really very excited to now share it with my colleagues in nutrition as well. So what I would like to do is I'll first start off by just some very basics. This is kind of ophthalmology 101, and just introduce you to the eye itself, the anatomy of the eye, and also a little bit about the physiology of the eye. So when we see the eye externally, we're just seeing the very, very surface. It's almost like looking at just the tip of the iceberg. So we see the eyelids, we see the lashes, we see the white part of the eye called the sclera, and then we see the cornea, which is the clear part of the eye, the very front surface of the eye, which is curved, and then we see the colored part of the eye, which is the iris. And in this image, you see that the person has blue eyes, and then you could see on the right-hand image that this is a cross-section of the eye. So imagine you take the eye, you cut it in half, and in the very front is the cornea, which is labeled. And then the colored part is the iris, but behind that there are quite a few very, very important structures, and there are also very important connections of those structures, so I'll explain what they are. So immediately behind the iris, the colored part of the eye, sits the lens, which in this diagram is white. Normally it's clear, it's transparent, but it can get opacified as people get older if they're developing cataracts, for example. Then behind that is what we call the posterior segment of the eye. And the inside of the eye is really filled with a jelly called the vitreous jelly. It's a clear jelly. It is made out of collagen, as many other structures of the eye are also made out of collagen. And in the very back of the eye is the retina. So in this diagram, the retina is colored orange, and you could see some of the blood vessels, which are actually embedded within the retina itself, and also there are blood vessels underneath the retina. And then, so the retina is, imagine the eye is a sphere. The retina basically covers the entire back surface of that sphere. So it does go 360 degrees around in the back of the eye. And then the cells, the retina is actually quite a complex structure. There are about 9 different layers of various types of cells in the retina, which all work together. They capture light images. Then they transmit, they transduce that image into an electrical signal, and then that electrical signal gets transmitted through the optic nerve, which is that yellowish kind of beige color structure you see there, and that optic nerve then connects with the brain. So as you can see, the eye has very unique structures. Part of the eye is a direct extension of the brain, but also the outside of the eye, the external structures of the eye, are actually derived from the ectoderm, which also helps to make up our skin. And the outside part of the eye is, as I mentioned before, it's made out of collagen and various different types of collagen. So supporting that is important as well, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. So Ashley, if we could go to the next slide. So as I was mentioning before, the optic nerve is a very important structure. It's actually the cable that connects our eyes to the brain. And the brain is really what enables us to see. So the eye is a conduit for those signals to get transmitted to the brain. And actually the vision center in the brain, it spans quite a few different structures within the brain, but the vision center takes up about 30% of our brains. So that's pretty incredible that 30% of our brain is dedicated to both vision as well as some of the other visual pathways. For example, the brain receives input from the eyes, but the brain also sends back input to our eye muscles, to our eye socket. It helps us move our eyes, helps us move our lids as well. So it's a very important kind of interplay between the eye, the visual system, and the brain. Next slide, please. Okay, so many people oftentimes think of the eye as a window to our soul, and that's absolutely true. But the eye is also a window to our overall health. There are actually many systemic conditions that can have manifestations in the eye. They can cause changes in the structures of the eye, or even cause symptoms, including vision loss. So I'll just go through what some of these potential systemic conditions that have ocular manifestations are. So first of all, blood pressure can be reflected in the eye. So many people oftentimes think of high blood pressure as being not a good thing, but also low blood pressure can also cause changes in the eye as well. Diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2, diabetes is actually one of the leading causes of vision loss in both the US as well as the world. So it's important to think about blood sugar control and its management. Nutritional deficiencies, there are some very specific nutrients. When people are deficient in these nutrients, they can actually experience vision loss. So for example, vitamin B12 can cause a significant central vision loss, as can folate deficiency. Now, I had mentioned before that the eye is very closely connected to the brain. So whenever people have strokes within the brain, they can actually also have vision loss as well. And so there are various types of vision loss people can have. Oftentimes it's peripheral vision loss. There are also strokes that can happen in the eye itself. So yes, there are brain strokes, but there are also eye strokes. So, but it all has to do with vascular health, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation as well. Migraine is a very common neurologic condition which has visual manifestations. People oftentimes have various symptoms, for example, flashing lights, light sensitivity, sometimes even loss of vision or double vision with migraine, and these all manifest very closely with ocular health. And then there are a host of autoimmune diseases and inflammatory conditions that can also be seen in the eye in terms of pathology. So for example, thyroid problems, whether one is hyperthyroid, meaning Graves' disease, or hypothyroid, specifically autoimmune hypothyroidism, which is Hashimoto's disease, can manifest in the eye as well as the eye socket and cause vision loss or even double vision. MS, which is a multiple sclerosis, is a neurologic condition which is autoimmune in nature that also oftentimes is associated with vision issues. Often, I actually see quite a few patients where they have vision issues. They come to see me first, and ultimately their final diagnosis may end up being MS. There's a condition called myasthenia gravis, not so commonly known, but it can cause weakness of muscles, both in the eyes as well as in other parts of the body. It is autoimmune. It definitely can cause visual issues. Lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's disease, which is basically dry eye, dry mouth, can really affect visual function. And then there are some inflammatory conditions, for example, sarcoidosis, which typically affects the lungs or the skin, but it can also present in the eye. And then finally, Lyme disease can also have manifestations in our vision. So as you can see, there are a host of conditions, as well as many others which I didn't mention, which are important in terms of it's almost like a two-way path. So the systemic condition can cause visual issues, but sometimes the visual issues may actually be an indicator that there is a systemic condition going on. So let's move on to the next slide here. Okay, so many patients will come in with various eye complaints, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky to tease out, are these symptoms purely ocular symptoms, or could they be an indicator of something more systemic going on? So for example, patients may come in with blurry vision. They may just have generalized blurry vision, or they may have blurry vision at certain distances, for example, distance or up close or intermediate. They may also experience blurry vision in a certain part of their vision, meaning either centrally or peripherally. So it's important to kind of tease out these questions, and perhaps even if you're working with an eye care professional, whether it's an ophthalmologist or optometrist, try to relay some of these concerns that patients may be having. Vision loss of various different kinds. So there's a whole spectrum of vision loss. Sometimes patients may lose a little bit of vision, sometimes more severe vision, but it's slightly different than just blurry vision. Vision loss typically means something more what we call a scotoma, meaning a deficit within one's vision. Dry eye is also a very common complaint many people will have, and we'll get a little bit more into dry eye during the presentation. Double vision as well as headaches. Now, sometimes both double vision and headaches may signify perhaps there's a neurologic condition going on, but certainly these are symptoms that are quite common that come in to an ophthalmologist or optometrist, but may actually even be picked up on a nutritional assessment. It's important to sometimes ask these questions of your clients. The important thing to also think of is that you don't really know unless you ask, because many people, they don't necessarily bring forward a lot of these symptoms. So it's really important to ask your clients whether they're having any specific eye issues or not, and perhaps ask some of the questions that I just mentioned. And also some of these symptoms may occur later on in the course of disease. So for example, in very early stages, hypertension or diabetes may not cause vision issues. It's only when they get to a certain point where vision loss may, is a threat that people may actually become symptomatic. So it's also important to kind of assess with your clients when you're doing their complete assessment. Have they been to see an eye doctor recently? When was the last time they went? And encourage them to get regular checkups, because again, many of these conditions may be asymptomatic. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what different types of vision loss may look like to a patient, and then we'll get more into the nutritional aspects of preserving vision and nutritional needs. So the image on your bottom left is an image of normal vision. So you can see it's clear, crisp, the colors are quite bright, there's good contrast. Now the image right above it is what someone with a cataract may see. So you can see that there's definitely a blurring of the borders and sharpness and contrast. Color is still intact in this particular image, but many people with cataract will describe loss of color vision or kind of a dimming or fading of their color vision. And then the center picture is an example of what someone with glaucoma may see. So what happens in glaucoma is that there's peripheral vision loss, and eventually that peripheral vision loss progresses to the point where someone can end up with tunnel vision. And so what you're seeing here is someone with significant darkening in their peripheral vision, but just a central area of clear vision. The image in the center on the center bottom is what someone with age-related macular degeneration may see, or AMD as we like to call it for short. And in this image, you can see that there's a very dark spot right in the center of where the boy's faces should be. And so we call that a central scotoma, meaning a central loss of vision. And this can be really quite impactful in one's daily life. For example, not only may your clients have difficulty seeing faces, they will probably have trouble reading, for example, or doing anything up close that requires a fine acuity. They tend to have intact peripheral vision, so they can probably still navigate pretty well. They can probably get around on their own, perhaps not be able to drive, but they can pretty much get around within their home on their own. But centrally, they have a pretty significant deficit. And then the image on the right-hand side is what someone with diabetic retinopathy may experience. So in this case, what happens is in diabetic retinopathy, with chronic elevated blood sugar hyperglycemia, there is leakage of fluid, protein, as well as blood underneath the retina and into the retina, and it causes these patchy areas of loss of vision. So basically, many of you have probably heard of leaky gut syndrome or even leaky brain syndrome. Diabetic retinopathy is a type of leaky eye syndrome where fluid leaks out of blood vessels that really should not be happening. And actually the same is true for macular degeneration. It is a form of leaky eye syndrome. So let's go on to the next slide. So what can we do to try to promote one's visual health, to maintain vision and keep our eyes functioning well, to try to stave off some of these vision-threatening conditions? So so most of us have probably remember hearing from our parents, eat your carrots. They'll keep your eyesight intact. They'll keep your eyesight 20/20. But is that really true? And the answer is yes. Carrots are very important. It's not just a myth that carrots are good for your eye health, but just to expand a little bit further on that, carrots are not the only nutrient that that's important for vision health. There are many other nutrients which are really critical for your eyes to function properly. So I think for the next section, I'm really going to be talking about what does better total eye nutrition entail? What are the specific types of foods that one should be eating? And also, what else can you do to try to promote eye health in terms of lifestyle and prevention. So just thinking back to what I'd said before, so the eye is a direct extension of the brain, and 30% of the brain is devoted to our vision. So whatever is good for brain health is also good for eye health. And what I like to use, I use various therapeutic diets in my practice. But I like to use the mitochondrial food plan, also called the Mito Food Plan, which was developed by the Institute for Functional Medicine, or IFM. Now, I think perhaps some of you are familiar with IFM, but they have wonderful therapeutic food plans. I like this specific one because of multiple reasons. It is a food plan which is plant-based. I should say plant-rich, really, not purely plant-based, but plant-rich. It has very high antioxidant value. It has quite a few polyphenols, flavonoids, and it also is rich in omega-3s. It's anti-inflammatory, and it also has low glycemic index. So I like to use a lot of the mitochondrial foods that are described in the IFM food plan. And if you've actually read it, there are 12 therapeutic foods which are beneficial for brain health. And I'll go through what some of these foods are, but I also do want to also mention on the bottom of this slide, you can see that the mitochondrial foods are just the beginning of the approach to total eye nutrition. There are a couple of extra important nutrients which I'll go through, which are really kind of the mitochondrial food plan plus that I like to include for my patients. So we'll go through all of these. Let's maybe Ashley, if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so I think I'd covered this previously, but in terms of the amount, so the mitochondrial food plan really does rely on plant-based foods, but in terms of how much, oftentimes patients ask me, how much should I be eating? And I typically like to recommend at least 5 servings a day of some of these healthy fruits and veggies. So let's go through what some of these actually are. Some of these therapeutic foods are actually are. So first of all, we'll start with berries. So berries of any kind, whether that's blueberries, blackberries, bilberries, raspberries, strawberries, goji berries, these are all wonderful for eye health. And the reason is because, multiple reasons. They are a rich source of polyphenols called anthocyanins. They provide pigment, which serve as antioxidants within the eyes. They're also high in vitamin C content, and vitamin C is important to help maintain collagen for the eye, for the structure of the eye. And then also the benefit of berries is that they have a very low glycemic index. So it is helpful, especially in patients who are monitoring their blood sugar. It's a healthy type of fruit for them to have in their diet. Now, I typically recommend at least 1 bowl of berries a day and to try to mix it up, so various different colors of berries. Now, another very important therapeutic food for brain health as well as eye health is avocado. And the reason is because avocado is rich in vitamin E, which is also a potent antioxidant. It's also rich in glutathione, another very important antioxidant, and it's also rich in healthy fats. Avocado, many people know it as brain food. It's also eye food. And I typically recommend either a quarter to half an avocado daily. Sometimes it's actually better to mix up the avocado with other veggies because I think the absorption of the healthy fats is better bioavailability if it's mixed with other nutrients. So the third therapeutic food as part of the Mito food plan is broccoli. And I should actually say not just broccoli, but many of the other cruciferous vegetables. And this is because this class of vegetables, so broccoli, cauliflower, these vegetables have sulforaphanes, which are very important for detoxification within the liver. So, so that's another wonderful food for your eyes. And then number 4 is salmon, specifically wild caught salmon, not farm raised salmon. And I'll explain that, the reasoning behind that a little bit later in the presentation. Salmon is very rich in healthy omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA. And DHA is wonderful for brain health because much of the brain is made up of fats, healthy fats, which comprise the phospholipid membranes of brain cells. But a very interesting fact is that the highest concentration of omega-3 is actually found in the eye. So it's actually in the retina itself. So the photoreceptors of the retina have the highest concentration of omega-3 in the body. So it's really, really important to support that with adequate DHA in your diet. And so now moving on to therapeutic food group number 5. So here I have listed almonds, but basically not just almonds, but several other nuts as well. So for example, walnuts, pistachios, Brazil nuts. These are wonderful for eye health, and they have antioxidants of vitamin E, glutathione, as well as healthy fats. And I typically recommend not to overdo it with nuts. Usually about a 1/4 cup a day is sufficient. The other benefit of almonds is that and also Brazil nuts, is that they're rich in selenium, which is also very important for metabolism within the eye. And then the sixth therapeutic food, which I'll talk about today, is spinach. So spinach is leafy greens, a great source of vitamin A, as well as some of the other carotenoids, which are important for eye health. So, so these are kind of my top 6, but as I said, there are 12 total therapeutic foods as part of the Mito food plan. So if you wanted to go a little bit deeper, you can access them through the IFM mitochondrial food plan if you're an IFM member, or also in the Better Nutrition Program Eye Health Assessment. All of these 12 foods show up within section 1 right in the beginning, as well as the recommended amounts that the daily intake that's recommended. So, so there are a couple of other important points in terms of maintaining eye health. So yes, providing adequate nutrients is important, but also other kind of lifestyle factors that can improve metabolism is very important. So the eye is very, very metabolically active, similar to the brain. It has a very high turnover. It's constantly processing visual input, and so we need to promote mitochondrial energy metabolism. So intermittent fasting, many of you have probably used intermittent fasting for yourselves and possibly even your clients, but intermittent fasting is just kind of being investigated in terms of how it may benefit eye health. So we know that it definitely benefits brain health. It promotes ketosis, use of ketones for energy in the brain, but there's some really interesting pilot studies that show that it may be great for eye health as well, specifically conditions such as glaucoma. May be very helpful. But in general, various forms of intermittent fasting, or even simple caloric restriction, maybe not on a set schedule like intermittent fasting, but caloric restriction can be quite effective as well, just also in terms of maintaining glycemic levels and avoiding spikes in blood sugar, because that can lead to more issues from diabetes causing diabetic retinopathy in the back of the eye. Other ways to promote energy metabolism. So this is not exactly energy, but I also like certain herbs. For example, curcumin, which helps to fight inflammation, is also very good for eye health, as well as a couple of other herbs and botanicals, which I like. Resveratrol, you can certainly get it from foods, but it may also be helpful if you take a supplement, because resveratrol is a polyphenol, and it also is a very potent antioxidant. Saffron also has been promoted for eye health, specifically for macular degeneration, for fighting macular degeneration. It's thought to have antioxidant properties. Now, another very important kind of a lifestyle factor and as well as a nutrition factor is hydration status. So we need adequate blood flow and nutrients and detox to promote eye health. And one of the best ways to maintain that is to have adequate hydration. And many of my patients often ask, how much hydration is adequate? And as a general rule of thumb, I usually tell patients to take their body weight in pounds to divide by 2, and that's how many fluid ounces they should be having every day. Now, it doesn't have to come only from water. It can come from other beverages as well, but I typically try to steer patients away from beverages which are high in sugar or high in caffeine. The other way to get adequate hydration is to actually eat your water. So if you do have a plant-rich diet, a lot of the fruits and vegetables that you'll be having are rich in water content. So that's another wonderful way to get that hydration to nourish your vision, your eyes as well as your brain. Now there are a couple of other things, lifestyle interventions that have actually also been shown to promote energy metabolism. This has more been shown in brain health, not specifically yet eye health, but I hope that in the next 5 to 10 years, there'll be a lot more research done in terms of the benefits of these for eye health as well. So intellectual stimulation, it's always important to challenge your brain, perhaps learn a new skill, learn a new language, puzzles, these are all wonderful, or simply even having a conversation with someone is a great form of intellectual stimulation. Exercise, now sometimes I kind of substitute the word exercise for movement, because exercise, the word itself, may intimidate some people, especially if they're not used to moving. But I typically say, just try to get up and move a couple of times a day, walk around the house, go upstairs, go downstairs, or just do some gentle stretching, and then work your way up. So perhaps then that will lead to some a little bit more rigorous exercise. Now, I think the general medical community now really advocates for exercise that is 3 times a week that raises your heart rate for 30 minutes. And that may be, again, a little bit difficult for many people to accomplish right off the bat, but if they work up to that, that's a wonderful goal for you to kind of encourage people to attain. And then meditation is also wonderful for eye health. There is actually a specific form of meditation which I know that many of my patients have benefited from, and it's called cupping. So basically, it's taking your palms, both palms, and covering your eyes completely, so really to block out any light that's coming in, and then to meditate that way. And some of my patients, I have them do it for 5 to 10 minutes, but some do it for even longer. And it's really a wonderful way to rest your eyes, to really just to kind of basically calm your eyes, your brain, and your body down. As wonderful health benefits. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the additional nutrients that are important for eye health? So yes, the mitochondrial food plan is a great way to start, but there are some specific additional nutrients which your eyes need to stay healthy. And I should say that oxidative damage is the cause of many eye diseases, especially as people age. So whether it be cataracts, which is a clouding of the lens in the eye, or glaucoma, which is an optic nerve disease where the fluid in the eye sometimes does not drain properly, and it's thought that the fluid is not draining properly because of oxidative damage to the drainage system of the eye. And then also retinal health. The retina is a very thin tissue. It's 9 cells thick, but it's extremely, extremely thin. And it's very prone to, or very susceptible to oxidative stress, whether it's stress from light rays, stress from toxins, stress from nutritional deficiencies. So what are the ways you can promote eye health? So the carotenoids there are many different types of carotenoids. So we were talking about before vitamin A, which is an important carotenoid, but there are other carotenoids which are called the xanthophyll carotenoids. And xanthophyll basically means yellow pigment. So these are yellow pigmented carotenoids, and there are two specifically that are already actually found in your eye in high concentrations in the retina. And these two are lutein and zeaxanthin. And so these xanthophyll carotenoids are very, very important. What they do is they act as powerful antioxidants, they quench free radicals, and they also actually act as a natural light filter. So these molecules are incredible. They're actually able to filter out blue light, as harmful rays of blue light, as well as UV light, and it protects these light rays from reaching your eyes and causing further damage. So they're wonderful molecules. It's almost like having sunglasses built into your eyes themselves. So there are specific sources of these xanthophyll carotenoids. So leafy greens are a wonderful source. So I had mentioned before spinach, but any kind of leafy greens, so spinach, kale, collard greens, Swiss chard, those are some wonderful sources. Dandelion greens, mustard greens, and then the other xanthophyll carotenoid is zeaxanthin, and zeaxanthin is actually found right in the center of the retina, and it's thought to be actually very, very important, more important than lutein for eye health. And zeaxanthin it's best found in orange pigmented fruits and vegetables. So for example, orange peppers, squash, yams, sweet peppers. There is a little bit in carrots as well. Pumpkin is also a great source of zeaxanthin. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit to lutein. I think I had neglected to mention this, but so most sources of lutein are plant-based, but there is one very important animal product that is high in lutein, and that is egg yolk. So I know that many people probably are a little bit cautious about having egg yolk in their diet because of the cholesterol content, but it may be worthwhile to recommend maybe 1 or 2 servings of egg yolk a week, just to provide that high concentration of lutein for your retinal health. Now, there's also another carotenoid called mesozeaxanthin. Now, mesozeaxanthin is actually thought to be a more powerful antioxidant than zeaxanthin. And mesozeaxanthin is, unfortunately, it's not readily available in food sources, but it is available in marigold flowers. So if you wanted to take mesozeaxanthin, you probably have to take an extract from a flower to get that, and many supplements do contain a combination of all of these carotenoids, so lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. In terms of recommended daily intake of these 3 carotenoids, so it's believed for lutein that one should get 6.5 milligrams per day in their diet of lutein. But unfortunately, most people, especially people on Western diets, most Americans, only get about 1 or 2 milligrams a day. So that really is quite an important need that needs to be filled either with diet or perhaps even with supplements. In terms of zeaxanthin, the recommended daily intake is anywhere from 1 to 2 milligrams a day. And again, it may be difficult to meet that requirement because it's not as concentrated in some of these foods, so it may be beneficial to use a supplement. And as I mentioned before, mesozeaxanthin is it's just not found in normal foods. Astaxanthin is it's a very interesting molecule. So it's a red pigmented carotenoid. It is made by a specific microalgae called Hematococcus pluvialis, and this algae lives in very hostile conditions. It lives in the desert. There's very little water. There's strong sun. So this algae has been able to create this molecule, which is basically a super antioxidant, and it creates this molecule basically to protect its DNA against all of these stressors in its environment. So astaxanthin is made by the algae, but there are many species of marine animals that eat this algae, and because it is a red pigment, it gives a lot of the marine animals that eat it a reddish kind of a hue to their body. So, for example, salmon, wild salmon is rich in astaxanthin. Now, farm salmon oftentimes are fed pigment to get that nice kind of reddish pink color. So make sure that if you're having salmon, you choose the wild caught form of salmon. Other marine animals that have high concentrations of astaxanthin include trout, specifically rainbow trout, shrimp, as well as krill. So, it may be helpful to have some of this in your diet, or perhaps even supplement. In terms of the recommended dietary intake of astaxanthin, it hasn't been quite established, but I think that most researchers say about 4 milligrams a day should be sufficient. But there are formulations available anywhere from 2 milligrams to 12 milligrams in certain supplements of astaxanthin. Astaxanthin again is a really very unique molecule. So it's not normally found in human eyes. At least it has not been shown to be in the retina of human eyes, but it is a very powerful antioxidant within our systems, in our blood, for example. But astaxanthin is found in certain bird species. So, for example, birds with very kind of X-ray vision, eagles, for example, some hawks, actually have astaxanthin in their retinas as oil droplets. And it's believed that this astaxanthin is really what's enabling them to have this better than 20/20 vision. Some hawks and other birds of prey have vision that's 20/15 or 20/10, which is really attributed to astaxanthin within their eyes. So now let's move on a little bit further. So in terms of some other important nutrients for eye health, we've talked about vitamin A, a little bit about vitamin C, a little bit about vitamin E, but there are some minerals and metals that are important for eye health as well. So listed here, I have zinc and copper, but I'll also add selenium and iron as well, and magnesium. So these are the important nutrients. These are actually all also in the Better Eye Health nutrition assessment, so they're all listed there as well. And then, so we've talked about lens health, retinal health. Let's talk a little bit about other nutrients for eye health specific to the surface of the eye. So our eyelids, our oil glands within the eyelids, and the cornea. So dry eye is a very common condition, and there is a lot of work that's been done in terms of helping dry eye with omega-3s. And I had mentioned that omega-3s are very found in high concentration within the retina. They also are very important for lubrication of the surface of the eye. So we have oil glands within our eyelids. These oil glands are called meibomian glands, and they secrete oils for the tear film. And if we don't have a healthy oil layer, our tears will evaporate, and that will lead to dry eye, a specific kind of dry eye called evaporative dry eye. So it's important to promote the oil glands into making healthy oils to lubricate the surface of the eye. So DHA and EPA have been investigated in terms of their benefits for dry eye. The Women's Health Initiative was a very large study done in the late 80s to early 90s, and there were over 39,000 women enrolled in this study, but they looked at a subset of these women, about 1,500 who actually had dry eye. And what they found was that the top fifth of these 1,500 women who actually had a higher intake of DHA, dietary DHA from fish, intake 2 to 3 times weekly, actually had significantly less dry eye symptoms and findings than the subset of women who had who were in the lower fifth category. So dietary omega-3s were found to be very helpful for dry eye. And there have been many, many other studies subsequent to the Women's Health Initiative that have looked at the benefit of omega-3s for dry eye. There was a large meta-analysis done of over 700 subjects, multiple studies that found that yes, omega-3 dietary as well as supplementation was helpful for dry eye to reduce the measures of dry eye. But then there was another study that was published just in 2018 in JAMA called the DREAM study, so DREAM, and that study unfortunately did not find addition of omega-3s was helpful for dry eye. Now, I just want to just to give you a little bit of perspective into that particular study, the negative study, which was the DREAM study. So in that study, they used an omega-3 supplement. It had 1,000 milligrams of DHA, 2,000 milligrams of EPA. So that was the study supplement, but then the placebo was not a pure placebo. The placebo was olive oil. And olive oil at 5,000 milligrams a day. So really they were comparing omega-3s versus olive oil as a supplement. And so we just have to take the results of that study with a grain of salt because of that, because it was not a pure placebo-controlled study. We don't know whether olive oil has a benefit for vision health, but it's certainly good for dry eye, but it's certainly good for overall health. So, and then I think I had neglected to mention earlier, we'll just go back to the topic of retinal health and AREDs. So just to give you just a little bit of background on the use of supplements for macular degeneration. So many of you have probably heard of the AREDs supplements out there. They're very common. They sell them at all the drugstores. They're Preservision and all other various different brands. But what the ARED study was, it was the age-related eye disease study looking at prevention of cataracts and macular degeneration using a very specific eye health formulation. So there were two studies. So there was AREDS 1 and AREDS 2. So in AREDS 1, basically, I'll go over what the ingredients were in AREDS 1. So AREDS 1, the supplement had beta carotene, which is a form of precursor to vitamin A. So 15 milligrams of beta carotene, vitamin C, 500 milligrams, vitamin E in the form of alpha tocopherol, 400 milligrams. It also had zinc oxide, 80 milligrams, and cupric oxide, 2 milligrams. And this study had over 3,000 patients that were followed for several years. And unfortunately, what the study found was that the supplement didn't have a tremendous impact on prevention of macular degeneration, but in a certain subset of patients, there are different types of macular degeneration. So there's early, moderate, and then advanced. So this formulation helped reduce the progression of early to advanced by 25%. So there was some benefit seen in that specific subset of patients. Now, there was a subsequent study called AREDS 2, which actually looked at a slightly different formulation. So what they did was they took out the vitamin A, because there was thought to be an increased risk of lung cancer in people who smoke. So they replaced the vitamin A with a separate formulation of lutein and zeaxanthin, lutein 10 milligrams and zeaxanthin 2 milligrams. And they also added the omega, so DHA and EPA. And again, they found very, very similar results in that this AREDS 2 supplement reduced the risk of progression of dry to wet macular degeneration by 25%. So let's move on. Okay, so as you're assessing your client's eye health and their nutritional status, there are a couple of other things to keep in mind. And I wish we actually had a whole other hour to discuss this because I know we're running out of time. But the relationship between eye health and gut health is just an area of upcoming research and very, very interesting. So there's actually been some studies done on gut dysbiosis. So basically an imbalance in the gut microbiome, and it's linked to certain inflammatory conditions within the eye, such as macular degeneration, uveitis, and even migraine. So I think probably within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have a much better understanding of how our gut microbiome can affect our eye health as well. There also happens to be an ocular microbiome. So on the surface of the eye, within the eyelids, on the surface, the conjunctiva, the cornea, there are actually organisms that live on the surface of the eye that are important to maintain eye health and also prevent dry eyes. So we're also learning about that as well. So very interesting areas of research. When you're doing your assessment of your clients, it's also important to ask about specific medications because these can also impact vision. So specific ones to ask about, it's not listed here, but steroids, any kind of steroid, whether that be an oral steroid, an inhaled steroid, or a topical steroid, can have potential implications in terms of eye health. Steroids have been shown to increase the risk of cataracts, to increase the risk of diabetes, also increase the risk of certain infections in the eye, such as herpetic infections. Other medications to ask about: Plaquenil, hormones, certain antibiotics such as the cycline, so tetracycline, minocycline, doxycycline, and digoxin, which is a cardiac medication that can cause visual changes as well. And then Ashley, I don't know if we'll have time to go through all of this, but I'll just mention very quickly, it's also important to promote healthy behaviors when it comes to eye health. So modulating stress levels, whether it be through exercise, meditation, or other stress reduction techniques, is very, very important. It helps to keep blood pressure down. It helps to just modulate oxidative stress within the eye. Avoiding fumes and other chemicals, very, very important. So something people may not think about: cooking fumes or even barbecue fumes are very important for to protect against, especially for eye health. So definitely exposure to certain fumes may increase the risk of dry eye. There are also certain eye conditions. There's actually a specific optic nerve condition I'm thinking of called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, in which exposure to chemicals and fumes may actually cause or trigger vision loss. Then there's also the importance of wearing proper sunglasses. So UV protection is very, very important, as well as in certain situations wearing blue blockers. And again, I could talk for an hour on this topic alone, just simply, protecting your eyes against various wavelengths of light. So if anyone has any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to have that conversation with you and answer your questions. So let's see, next slide, please.
And I think, Ronnie, what we'll do is jump in here, and I might need you to mute for 1 second. I'm hearing your computer. Okay. So as all of you, I would love to have Ronnie on for 2 hours, and we will. I'm going to jump into there is an upcoming Facebook Live where we're going to talk about some of the things like the blue blocker, and some of the very specific recommendations that she has, especially also for our patients. So we can invite them to join for that as well. So what we're going to do now is dive into the nutrition assessment component, and one of the key reasons that, as you can tell, why I'm so excited about having this tool is that there is so much information, and what Dr. Ronnie has done is helped us cull it down into a couple of pages of an assessment. But then also, when you get the general eye evaluation, you will also get all the recommendation, the commentary on the recommendations, what people's answers mean based on all this amazing information that you heard here today. So it's really done for you. And I just wanted to pop in before we go into this section on nutrition assessment. What we're going to do is we're going to go through nutrition assessment, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. And we are going to continue with the case studies. I think we may go about 10 or 15 minutes over. If you need to pop off, absolutely no issue whatsoever. You will be getting the recording, and you can finish it up at a time that's better for you. And I also just wanted to alert you, Dr. Ronnie has a couple of incredible ebooks on her site that are free for both you and for your patients. One of my favorite things most recently has also been following her on social media, because she's got sharing a lot of this content and bite-sized information, and a lot of it is nutrition related and very tip oriented. And as I mentioned, we will be having that Facebook Live for patients and practitioners in February, and that will be in our private Facebook group as well as on my Facebook page, and so you can request access. Again, you're going to get all of this information sent to you when you get everything tomorrow. But the main reason I'm also wanted to let you know, if you do have to pop off earlier today, we've put together 2 opportunities for you to save on getting all of these tools, everything from the eye evaluation and also things like the digestive assessment. One of the things we'll hear about in the case study with dry eyes is that there's also a likelihood for women in perimenopause and menopause to be dealing with that. And so we're talking about many, many clients and prospects that you could be working with and helping with on that part. And so what you can do is you can use at checkout I-25 to only today. This is not an ongoing offer, to save 25% on either the shop, which would give you all of the tools and both versions of the practitioner, the eye evaluation, the practitioner version, and the answer key. as well as our programs, etc. Or you can get the hormone package, which includes these eye assessments, and then also some of the menus and the guides that provide supplemental information for you to share with your patients around some of the topics that Dr. Ronnie was talking about today. So we are going to go back and do the case studies, and we're going to have a quick conversation about the nutrition assessment. And so I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Ronnie, to talk really about how we do this assessment, and also how practitioners like you and I can collaborate, whether the person on the watching today is an eye practitioner or whether they're a dietitian or health coach, etc. So back to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Ashley. So first of all, I have to say that I really, I think that this eye health evaluation is extremely unique, and there is really nothing else out there that's comparable. And trust me, I've looked, and I think that's one of the reasons why Ashley and I collaborated in terms of creating this, because it's a very needed tool. And so what it does is basically it does an assessment, not just of nutrition, but also of lifestyle factors and other basically eye health questions. So it's extremely comprehensive. So you know, it's important to ask about if you're evaluating a person, whether it's for eye health or not, to ask about their family history, because oftentimes eye diseases will run in families. There definitely is a genetic predisposition towards glaucoma or macular degeneration or certain corneal conditions that are genetically based. So ask about that. And then I had mentioned before, many patients may not offer that they're having symptoms, but if you ask them, they may be much more you know, willing to kind of delve deeper. So ask about dry eye symptoms. You know, is there any scratchiness of your eyes? Do you ever feel like there's sand or grit in your eyes? Do you have trouble if you're at the computer for an extended period of time? Do you have trouble? Do things get blurry? Do they get better when you blink? These are all some great questions to kind of tease out whether someone has dry eye or not. Ask about blurred vision. So not just central vision, peripheral vision. Sometimes I also ask about color vision as well, or night vision. And very importantly, ask about when their last eye exam was. So it's recommended that for adults over the age of 40 or 45, that one should get an annual eye exam. And the reason is because many eye conditions initially may be completely asymptomatic, and the only way to pick it up is through a full eye exam, which includes dilation as well. So, so getting back to the eye health evaluation, so I believe the first section goes through some of the therapeutic foods and you know, whether one has any of these foods in their regular diet, and then the next section goes through some of the beverages and then some of the other nutrients, and then there are specific recommendations. So once someone has done the initial part of the eye health evaluation, then you can work with them to find out where the deficits are and how they can correct some of those gaps in their nutritional status. So, so it's a wonderful tool. Again, it covers everything. It covers nutrition for corneal health, for cataract health, glaucoma, as well as retina, and as well as brain health. So, so it's very comprehensive, and it's wonderful to use this and perhaps share it with some of the results with some of your eye care provider colleagues, whether that be your local ophthalmologist or optometrist. I'm sure that they will really appreciate your input when it comes to this, because you know, I have to say, you know, before I learned about integrative and functional medicine, I had no idea. Even as an ophthalmologist, I was practicing for 15 years. I had no idea what better nutrition for eye health really meant until I started to do my own research. And there is just so much out there, and it's so important to pass along this information, because so much eye disease is preventable, and it's, you know, it would be a shame for someone not to be equipped with this knowledge. So let's move on to some of the case studies. I think we have 2 case studies. Okay. So let's talk about the first one here. So so we have a 46-year-old woman, and she is in her late 40s. So she's she's menopausal, basically perimenopausal, and she has suffered from dry eyes for many years. She sees her ophthalmologist. She's been put on a host of drops, over-the-counter drops, as well as Restasis, which is a form of cyclosporine, a topical form of cyclosporine for the eyes for inflammation, and she's still not getting better. And just as an aside, she also has her medical condition is very important to note here as well. She has a history of rheumatoid arthritis, and she's currently not taking any specific biologic agents for her rheumatoid arthritis. So it's just currently not in any medical therapy. So you know, there's some areas here where you could really make a difference in terms of asking about her diet, her omega-3 intake, what sources is she getting her omega-3 from? Is it fish? Is it other marine animals? Is it plant-based, for example? Flaxseed, chia seeds also have are a great source of omega-3s, hemp seeds as well. And also, is she taking any supplements? And do those supplements have omega-3s? And also, how much omega-3 is in the supplement? So, you know, there's a whole range in terms of dosing. And perhaps if she's taking a supplement, but it's a low dose, maybe she can double the dose. What I like to do is I actually like to mix it up a little bit. So oftentimes I'll have my dry eye patients take a fish oil supplement maybe in the morning, and then a plant-based supplement in the evening, as well as to have the dietary intake of fish and some of those plant-based sources of omega-3s. So, so that try to support them in every way possible. The other area that you may want to ask about is, you know, how much omega-6 are they getting in their diet as well? Are they having really a high ratio of omega-6 to omega-3? I believe much of the population on Western diets has a significantly higher percentage of omega-6 to omega-3. I've seen some reports of 30 to 1 or even 40 or 50 to 1. So ideally you want to improve that to perhaps 6 to 1 or 4 to 1 if possible. So by simply, you know, adjusting the source of their fats in their diet and promoting healthy fats. There's also perhaps there's been some theories that having a little bit of omega-6 is very important for dry eye as well. So not just omega-3, but mixing it up with omega-6. And the reason is because omega-6, yes, it is considered pro-inflammatory. It goes down the pathway to make arachidonic acid, but omega-6 also helps to make prostaglandins, and those are thought to be good for eye health as well. So perhaps it's best to kind of mix it up. There's a specific supplement that I really like in terms of an omega-3, and I'll just mention it by name here if that's okay, Ashley. I like pure encapsulations. There's a supplement called Vision Pro, and it's a combination of DHA, EPA, as well as GLA. And that's basically what my go-to for eye health in terms of dry eye. There are some other lifestyle interventions that can really help as well. And so increasing the moisture in their workspace. So perhaps they can put a little humidifier, like a portable humidifier just by their workspace. Perhaps even wearing moisture goggles, which basically have a little silicone band. It seals in the moisture for their eyes. And also using what I like to call the 20-20 rule, which is if they're working on a screen for a prolonged period of time, or if they're reading for a prolonged period of time, every 20 minutes, set a timer and just close your eyes and rest your eyes for 20 seconds. And that allows your tear film to kind of coat the surface of the eye, to restore lubrication, and to relieve dry eye. Now, as a functional medicine practitioner, I also do a lot of root cause analysis in my office when it comes to dry eye. And you know, someone could have, they could be putting in, you know, plenty of drops, but if the lubrication is not staying on the surface of the eye, if it's just simply evaporating, then all of that effort is going, you know, it's not really helping. And so it's important to also look at the eyelid structures to make sure that the eyelid glands structurally are intact and that they're functioning properly. So that's something I do in my office as well. I do an eyelid gland evaluation because if someone has eyelid glands that are completely wiped out and they're missing, then they're not going to be able to supply their tear film with the healthy oils that we were talking about. So you know, then their treatment approach has to be personalized. Now let's go on to the second case, which is a case of risk for macular degeneration. So we have a 68-year-old male. He has a family history of macular degeneration in both parents. One parent has been diagnosed with dry macular degeneration with mild vision loss, and the other parent has been diagnosed with wet macular degeneration or advanced macular degeneration and significant central vision loss. And this patient, he went to his ophthalmologist and he was just told that he has the earliest stages of macular degeneration. Now what that means is basically in the back of the eye, there are changes in the retina that are called drusen. And these drusen are kind of yellowish white deposits that develop underneath the retina. And what they are, basically, they're accumulation of little areas of cholesterol surrounded by calcium and phosphate, and then there's inflammation around that. So basically, it's a core of cholesterol or lipid surrounded by some minerals surrounded by inflammation. And what happens is drusen by themselves may not be symptomatic. They may not actually cause vision loss unless they increase in size and number. And if that happens, then people may actually lose vision. They may progress to the more advanced stage of macular degeneration. So this is what the patient has been diagnosed with. In addition to that, he has fair skin, which is a risk factor for macular degeneration. So light eyes, light hair, light skin. We know from population studies that these are all risk factors for advanced vision loss and macular degeneration. The patient also has had some genetic analysis done. He's done 23andMe analysis, and it turns out that he is positive for one of the macular degeneration genes. Now, just to give you just a little bit of insight here, there are over 50 genes that have been identified with macular degeneration, but what the majority of those genes actually do, we still don't quite understand. So simply having a gene for macular degeneration does not necessarily mean that one will get the disease. Yes, it's one of the risk factors, but it's not the only factor. And there are other factors which I like to call the epigenetic risk factors of macular degeneration. It has to do with diet, a pro-inflammatory processed food diet, low in antioxidants. That type of diet can also predispose to macular degeneration. Abdominal obesity has also been shown to predispose to macular degeneration, and potentially even light toxicity, so UV light or even blue light. We're just learning more about it. It's not been proven yet, but there is some ongoing research about how exposure to certain wavelengths of light may increase the risk of macular degeneration. So this individual has one of the genes associated. He also happens to have, in his 23andMe analysis, he actually has a SNP, or a genetic variant of a BCO1 enzyme. Now, BCO1 stands for beta-carotene oxygenase 1, and it is the enzyme that converts beta-carotene into vitamin A. And I've talked throughout this presentation about how important the carotenoids are in vitamin A for eye health. But this individual actually has an enzyme that does not allow him to metabolize vitamin A properly. So what are the recommendations for him? Well, definitely I would put him on a diet which is plant-rich. For him, I would probably recommend not just 4 to 5 servings a day, but probably even higher, possibly 6 to 8 servings of some of those phytonutrients that I had talked about, some of those therapeutic foods, rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, some sulforaphanes. So for example, again, broccoli, cauliflower, avoiding the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is high in glycemic index, high in processed foods, high in unhealthy fats, to incorporate some form of exercise into his diet, as well as stress management. Now, in order to try to attempt to manage this BCO1 enzyme variant, in patients like this, where they have this enzyme, it may be best for them to get their vitamin A through animal products. So this is a situation where you may want to recommend the patient has dairy, eggs, perhaps liver as well, or even cod liver oil is a great source of vitamin A in this situation. So I think we're just about done with our case studies here. So I would just like to open it up. I know we've already gone over time, and I really thank you all for hanging in there. I see that most people are still on the webinar, which is wonderful, even beyond 60 minutes. So I would like to open it up to any questions that you may have. I think we probably have about 5 or 10 minutes left that we can try to answer some questions for you.
And we had one question come in, which is drusen reversible?
Mm-hmm. So this is a very interesting question. So typically, if you ask an ophthalmologist, they will say no, that this is a change that has happened in the back of the eye. Again, it's a deposit that occurs underneath the retina. It's lipid and inflammation, and most ophthalmologists will say that this is not reversible. But what I can tell you is that I have seen small drusen, not large drusen, but small drusen reverse and basically diminish in size or perhaps even disappear with significant dietary changes alone. So not even supplementation, but simply dietary changes alone, going away from the SAD diet to a more healthy plant-rich diet. So I think it really also just depends on the size of the drusen. So if you have large drusen or drusen that are sometimes what they do is they coalesce before progressing into advanced macular degeneration, that probably will not reverse completely or not reverse much with dietary changes alone. But you want to try to catch it early before it gets to an advanced stage.
Great. We have another question. What are your thoughts on PE3 for MGD?
PE3?
Sorry.
Correct?
PE3 for MGD.
Okay, so MGD, I'm not exactly sure. Is it PE3?
D as in dog.
Oh, DE3, is that correct?
Correct.
So I am not familiar with DE3. I don't know if that's a
it's an omega
steroid.
Got it. Lisa's asking the question. It's from PRN. It's an omega supplement. So I think just
yes. Okay, yes. So I'm very familiar actually with they use a reverse process to purify triglycerides, as they have a proprietary product which is kind of a purified omega, which has been studied in dry eye. So absolutely. So MGD is basically meibomian gland dysfunction, and it's the eyelid glands that I was talking about before that create the oils. And if those glands are structurally not intact, or if they're not functioning properly, meaning that they're not secreting healthy oils, then dry eye is very difficult to treat. So the PRN brand, I believe PRN stands for physician recommended nutrition, I think, but basically it's a company that's been out there for quite some time. They've done some studies in dry eye using their products, and they've shown benefit compared to placebo. So absolutely, that's a great brand to use. So I have only good things to say about them.
Great. Anyone else with questions? Ronnie, you provided so much information.
Actually, I'm looking at my notes, and there's so much else here I didn't have a chance to say. I wish we had another hour, but maybe we can talk a little bit more during the Facebook Live about some of these other points I wanted to make.
Okay, everyone, I'll have Ronnie, and I will go ahead class for it's 12:12. Again, thank you guys and gals so much for joining. This was, gosh, every time I hear her talk, I'm learning just so much opportunity. Digestive assessment for women. I was thinking in the dry eyes one about how important it would be to do a digestive assessment there, and how you can partner and collaborate with eye health practitioners, as Dr. Ronnie was suggesting, and really help those women, i.e. many of us perimenopausal, menopausal, where dry eyes is not just being treated, you know, with some drops, or just saying, worse yet, you know, just saying to deal with it. Valerie, thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. Fantastic speaker, fantastic info. So thank you so much. And everyone, again, you will be receiving this recording tomorrow. And I just wanted to emphasize that today is the only day for this bonus offer to be at play. But you also have access to a bunch of tools, and I highly recommend, if you're on social media, I would go ahead and check out Dr. Ronnie, especially on Instagram. And you said it was hard to hear the question due to an echo. Can you type them in with answers so we can see them? Of course, we will totally do that. If you want the slides, additionally, we offer them in a PDF form, and that you would just have to email team at the Better Nutrition Program to get those. And what ended up happening in that one question, Patty, just to help you, is that it was the specific name, branded name of an omega supplement. So it was DE3, and it was regarding a eye issue called MGD. And that is what Dr. Ronnie ended up talking about. So thank you on that part. All right, everybody, I hope you have an incredible week. And I know, again, that there's just so much that we can put into practice here. If you have any additional questions and you are in our Facebook group under Facebook groups, it's just Better Nutrition Providers. You can also ask that question there, and I will make sure that we get Dr. Ronnie's feedback as well. So Dr. Ronnie, thank you so much for your time with us today, and I really look forward to the Facebook Live as well.
Oh, same here. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
And we will all be together if you're at the Integrative Health Symposium at the Full Script booth. There. Okay.